Blaze!
Welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm. This is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I am your host, Scott Dr. GX Goldfine. If you enjoy this programming, subscribe to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube, which is where Truth and Rhythm lives, and be an advocate by spreading the word among fellow funk, jazz, and R&B music lovers. Join Truth and Rhythm's membership program through Patreon. You can also submit a direct donation to the cause anytime at funkandstuff.net. At that site, you can also purchase the book Everything's on the One, The First Guide of Funk. Shop for official Truth and Rhythm and Funk and Stuff merchandise, and use the Amazon links for all of your online purchases, which allocates a percentage to this show. For those of you who go the extra step in supporting the show, you have my heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to continue to shine the light on those special artists whose quest is to find truth in rhythm.
I am pleased to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership R&B music composer, arranger, producer, vocalist, drummer, and percussionist Dana Meyers. As one of the Solar label's core musicians, he contributed to recordings by artists such as Shalimar, The Whispers, Dynasty, Climax, and Carrie Lucas. Other artists he has worked with include Leon Silvers, Gladys Knight, Tavares, Atlantic Starr, Thelma Houston, Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, Evelyn Champagne King, The Spinners, Lenny Williams, Gerald Albright, and Tower of Power. Pretty impressive. Dana, thank you for joining the show. How are you?
Thank you for having me.
Good to see you.
Yeah. So how's everything there where you are?
Things are windy today. It's a blustery day.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's been raining here in California. They say it never rains in California, but it's been raining since October. So I don't know if that's a shift in what's going on weather-wise with the entire globe or what. But we've had a drought for like 15 years, and then suddenly it's raining like it's Ohio. So I don't know. I mean, it's a good thing because we need the water, but it's very strange. I've been out here since 1973, and it has never rained this much. So
wow.
Because it's a desert, why would it? It's a man-made. LA is man-made. But I mean, it's a good thing. It's not, we just have to see. But
yeah,
I saw your interview with Stokes the other day. I finally I watched it after we stuff. That was a nice interview.
Okay, hopefully it was pretty accurate.
Yeah. One thing he said, which is, I don't know if it's case of memory or still just needing to feel good about it. I did not leave the band for another deal. I got seriously ill, and I got a little bit better and was able to perform a little bit, but I had to sit down on stage and stuff. And then it came back. It was really bad again, arthritic condition, and I just looked horrible. We had a group meeting once, and I know they knew there was nothing that they could do with me, and they wanted to move on. I know, but I needed to be the one, even though it was the scariest thing I'd ever done to leave the group at that time because I had nothing. Right, I was in Ohio, in California with no family. My only family was Platypus. So, but I knew they needed to move on, so I left the group so that they could, do something that made sense for them. Because otherwise, they could force them to fire the cripple guy. that wouldn't be a very good look. But the whole thing with Eugene McDaniels and all that happened afterwards. I mean, he had always wanted me as an artist, but I would leave the group. But then I was out of the group, but I was ill. But for some reason, he figured, well, let me I'll take care of the doctor bills. Let me see what I can do. He believed in me that much as a singer, to try to even help, financially help with, and then the apartment I was in started, rain was coming in through the ceiling, and they sold the building, so me and another artist ended up actually moving out with him in Benedict Canyon and stuff, and it was a strange period of time. I mean, that's how the
Dana,
soul.
let me just make sure we kind of jumped in running there. So let me get
Okay,
viewers up to speed. We're talking about Platypus,
right,
and we're talking about Arthur Hakeem Stokes was the
right,
interview, and Dana was part of the original band, and you
right.
parted ways because you had this ailment,
Illness,
and
right.
so you're explaining that so everyone's up to speed.
Yeah, I just that was the one thing that kind of it bothered me, because it looked like, people always lead bands to do other greater things and stuff, but that wasn't the case. I mean, I would have never left the group. I had too much invested in the band to leave, and I had a lot of different people, Norman Whitfield and Don Davis, a lot of different people. I've been confronted by a lot of different people to leave and do a solo thing. Not even to leave the group, just to do a solo thing. Stuff, but
Well,
just
well,
didn't do it.
why don't you explain, Dana, how you actually came to be part of Platypus in the first place?
Okay, wow. I grew up with these guys. I mean, I met Carrie um, Rutledge, who was in Platypus, and Mark Wood, who was in Lakeside, when I was in the second grade and they were in kindergarten. That's how long I've known these folks. We all grew up. All of these folks. You know the history of Dayton and all the groups, the Ohio Players and Son and Heatwave and Slave.
Players.
Right. We all went to school together. I mean, we all grew up. It was the weirdest. I thought Dayton. I thought every city was like Dayton. But once I got out and I found out that Dayton was really this weird place, that musical place, that the only other places that was like even remotely like Dayton were cities that had record companies. People moved there, to be part of that movement. We were all born there, and the talent shows were like Motown reviews or Friday night at the Apollo or something. I thought every city was like that, but it was just we were just this weird. In Cincinnati as well, but Dayton even more. The Ohio, period. Ohio, I mean, the OJ's from Canton, and you got part of Switch and Howard Hewitt and all those guys in Akron, and and then Bootsy and all those guys in Cincinnati. But Dayton, I mean, there were 15 groups signed to major record companies from the 70s through the late 80s, just from Dayton alone. So I went to school with all of these people, but and I always wanted to be musical, but so as a little kid, Mickey Mouse Club and everything, you dream of little stuff. But I never thought it was possible, and I was raised by my grandparents and wasn't around my stepbrothers and stuff, so I didn't all the things that was going on in Dayton I didn't know about until like the eighth grade. Until the eighth grade was at high school for us. We didn't have a junior high school, and I missed all of that stuff that had been going on for years before I knew about it, the talent shows and stuff. So um, I get to our high school, Rolfe High School, and I, Arthur Stokes and Floyd Weatherspoon and those guys and Harold Bright, they're all like a year older than me. But I see them in the hallways, walking up and down the hallway singing in harmony and stuff, right? And I'm thinking, you know, I didn't know anybody my age could do this stuff. And then I finally go to a talent show that same year, and I see all of these people that I see in the hallways and you know, uh, in the cafeteria and stuff. All of these people that a year or so older than me, some in my grade, but mostly a year or two older than me, on stage in tuxedos and fancy shirts and doing choreography and playing instruments, sounding just like the record. I had no idea anybody my age could do this stuff. So it's funny. I saw an interview on John Lennon once. He went to this movie that had Elvis or somebody in it, or Chuck Berry or something. And in the theater, all the girls started screaming, right? And he said, "That's a good job." That's how I
Mhm.
felt the first talent show I went to. I said, "I'm doing that." I had always wanted to, but didn't know how. So uh, after that, we were all hooked up because the next year I was in choir with some of them. So that was the main thing from there. Everybody, even the musicians were in choir. Our choir was ridiculous. And then the whole cycle started of people being in and out of different bands with each other, like Major League Baseball. Somebody would be in a group and then you go away for the summertime and you come back and it switch. Somebody got trade from the Reds to the Cubs or something. So, and we were just all of those bands that were, in all of the major bands that came out of Dayton, I was in a band with at least one or two of them. In my career before moving on, we were all in groups and stuff together, off and on and in and out and stuff. And it was just, if I was given the chance to say, okay, you're going to start life over again, what year would you like to be born and where would you like to be born? I would not change that. I mean, it was a fairy tale upbringing to come up around all of those musicians, and to be on the younger side of it, and to be, and to learn from all of them. I mean, I think from 8th grade, I idolized Floyd Weatherspoon. Just because I never seen anybody with ears who hear music like that. He was the first person that I knew that wrote a song, completely wrote a real song by himself and stuff. So, I was just able to be in that environment. One of the first bands I was in had a lot of people would end up being a lot of those major groups. It's the first major group I was in, and so I was learning from all of them because they had all, even though they were only a year or two older than me, they had become a part of that. The whole thing in Dayton, the groups and stuff. But I didn't know about it. I was late to the show. I didn't even know it existed. Living with my grandparents, I hadn't gone to any talent shows. If I lived with my stepbrothers, I probably would have seen them do that and would have somehow figured out how to tag along or something. But and nobody that I knew my age mentioned it. I think they had all been to them, but nobody mentioned it to me. So it was all new, and I didn't know what to expect. My jaw was on the ground for about 3 weeks after that first talent show because I can't even explain how professional they were. It wasn't just some kids, oh, that's cute. It's like, no, the harmonies, the choreography, they went above and beyond. They didn't just show up and whatever. I mean, if they went and rented tuxedos and dinner jackets, if they weren't in a full band that was always, some of them were always in these bands, so they had uniforms. Other ones just put together these groups just for these talent shows. So I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And my life has never been the same since.
Wow. You must have heard some of their songs on the radio, though, and so forth, too. Some of the local bands.
No, there wasn't any. There wasn't any early on. There wasn't really any, and when there was, they were pretty, it wasn't too happening. So, the first of anybody that was R&B or that would end up being funk, not blues or jazz or gospel, was the Ohio Players. And originally, even them, because they were young then, I mean, they were older than us, but still really young, were just instrumentals, just singing some foolishness over the top of. You know what I mean? They were, so we watched them, go through their formative thing too. And then it wasn't until about 67, 68, where they did that album on Capitol, with Dutch Robinson and that had really good songs and it came out on a major record company. And so that changed things, but it didn't bust. So a lot of people other than the other musicians didn't pay that much attention because it wasn't a real big record. And then it wasn't until 1970 or something, 71, when they did Pain, and because even some of those first two albums weren't huge, but the Funky Worm was gold, so it was national. They were a national group all of a sudden, and everybody had to really pay attention. And that's the first time with other prior to that, only Floyd Weatherspoon and Tommy Henderson were the only two people that I knew that wrote songs, that actually, I had no idea, how do you do that? How do you write a song? And so and they just wrote it out of their ears. They didn't, they weren't in a band or any, you know what I mean? They just wrote some words down, had the melodies, and taught it to the band by humming to them. So I mean, I thought that was creativity way beyond anything that I ever knew. Like it's one thing if you're in a band and somebody comes in with a little hook or something and they play it and everybody starts to add to it and it turns into this thing. But for you sitting alone in your bedroom with a piece of paper and a pencil, hearing this melody and writing these songs out. So those are the first two that I saw that did that. And uh, me and the guitar player Larry Hines, we tried in like 69, 70 to write a song. It was pretty bad. But this is before we were platypus or any of that, or even before I joined the Four Corners. We were I don't even what were we called. We had a band. I went through several bands before I got to the sport, but we had a band with me and Rock Jones, Larry Hines, Otis Stokes, uh, Ronnie Jones, the drummer T.J. Townsend. You may not be familiar, but we did. We were together for a while. We called Rebirth or something. So at this point, me and Larry tried to write a song. It was our first attempt, but it wasn't very good. And then what happened is there was a group called the Bad Bunch, right? And I had gone in and out of that. It was Tommy Shelby who lived in Lakeside, uh, Tommy Owens, Bruce Mills, and Michael Watts. Michael Watts left to go to the Navy, and I took his place. So again, another one. They were all a couple of years older than me, but again, I got a chance to learn from these professionals. I mean, Thomas Shelby's still one of the most ridiculous choreographies I've ever met. I mean, he just comes up with this stuff. These moves that nobody else would think. Just look at Lakeside, and you see they don't move. Nobody else moves like that. And he and T. Meyer McCain are the ones who came up with that stuff. So I got a chance to learn from Tommy, and in between I did the thing with the rebirth thing with Rock and Hines and all. What happened is I graduated from high school in 1970. I was still there floating around that summer, you know, and and had rejoined the Bad Bunch again. Uh, and on the East Coast, the Four Corners had joined with the Ohio Hustlers. Previously, Floyd had been in a group with them, and they were called Hunty and the Entertainers. It was a review, right? 2 and 3 singers in a singing group in a band. The Oath of Stokes was in it, and Skip McDonald, and all of those people ended up being in the Sugar Hill Gang and stuff. That was the band, and they had gone on the East Coast, and 2 of my friends in the group, Eli Williams and Harold Bryant, had gotten into a very bad scuffle, and Harold left. So because we had all gone to school, and was in choir together and everything, the first person they thought of to replace him was me. So they called me, and so I accepted. Again, it was one of those funny decisions because obviously I wanted to do it, get out of Dayton, but I was in the Bad Bunch at the time, so I told them, Rock Jones was our bass player at the time. We were in his kitchen, and Bruce Mills and Shelby, and they were all really good about it. They said if it were me, I would do it. So yes, you should go ahead and do that. Don't worry about leaving us. You should do it. So um, so I finally actually got to officially be in a group with Floyd and Stokes. This was really a big deal.
What were you doing at that point? What position in the groups were you?
In the Bad Bunch as a singer. We were four-man singing group with a backup band. And touring around the tri-state area and everything, just doing covers. Which is what I was still going to be doing when I went to New Haven to join the Four Corners, but still was on a different label. They were just doing clubs up and down the East Coast from Albany, New York to Miami. The Cotton Club and Will of Chamberlain's Small's Paradise. So it was definitely a bigger. You know what I mean? It was a step up, and constantly it was rough. It was still, you didn't have your parents to fall back on. You were out there on your own. For officially, I wasn't just going out for the weekend. I was out there. It was my first time on a plane. Floyd had come back. I went back with him to New Haven, Connecticut, and it was my first time on an airplane. and my, and I knew I wasn't just going away for the weekend. I was joining this group who was going to be out there, who knew, who wasn't really planning on coming back ever, So,
So were you thinking this is fun or I'm going to make this my life?
oh no, I depended. It was good. It was my life from the time I was at that first talent show. I never had any intentions of any other kind of job or college or anything. You know, we all, everybody, all of us coming up, we were all very serious minded about the music. That's what we were going to do. Period. We watched the Temptations, we watched the Barcades, we watched all of these different acts, and we we bought those records, we smelled that vinyl, and that's what we were going to do. You know what I mean? That was it.
Like the five heartbeats. Yeah.
Parents thought whatever it was going to, it was I don't know how they, with what was going on in Dayton with all those groups, I don't know how they could have thought it was a fake, but we were determined that's what we were going to do. We didn't even know about about publishing or any of that stuff. We our mentality was sort of the same as the Beatles was originally. Get a record to get bigger gigs. We didn't know about publishing and songwriting fee. You know what I mean? It was just, we thought the songs was just a commercial to get bigger gigs. You get a hit record, then you play bigger places, these arenas and stuff. So that was our aim, to do that, to be. We thought from the eighth grade on, all of us thought we were going to be a Motown type act. If it was a Motown, Stax, Bolt, Atlantic, something. We had those dreams, and we were serious about it, and that's what was going to happen. And everybody that saw all of the different groups believed that was what was going to happen, because they knew, other than having hit records, we were every bit as good as those groups that were floating out there with the records. We just didn't have the machines behind us, but we could sing as well, we could dance as well as all of those groups, and the musicians could play as well. So, we knew this because all those groups came to town, so we got a chance to see them up close in clubs and other places. And we saw that, we knew it wasn't delusions of grandeur. We knew what we had, and all of everybody throughout Dayton, throughout the other groups knew. We knew all of these acts had this thing, whatever it was. But we thought that was every city until we got to everybody left and saw that, it really wasn't like that across the country. It's like we thought it was. But the yeah, everybody had that in mind. And if it didn't, whoever it didn't happen for, it only happened because something happened in life that changed, that took them out of that. A child that wasn't expected, or a parent that got ill. You know what I mean? Something major in life changed, because as many of those groups that with that talent, there's some talent in Dayton that you've never heard that's better than the talent that made it. I went in the eighth grade. The guy who encouraged me to sing, Brian Hackley, to me, he still has the best voice out of anybody that ever came out of Dayton.
Who were some of your favorite singers back then?
Back then, it was the Temptations that just took over. Early on, before I even got into the R&B thing, there was AM radio, so I listened to, it was pop stuff. You standing on the corner watching all the girls go by. It was that kind of stuff, and Frankie Cannon, oh wow one, that kind of stuff. So, and the Beatles came out and changed everything, the British invasion. But then when I got to Roth, those groups were all into singing groups, Motown, and Stax acts, Wilson Pickett and Aretha Franklin, and all, so it was that, the really pop soul of Motown, and the southern, soul of Memphis, and what came out of New York and stuff. So we all followed all of those acts. Everybody, Sam Cooke, we were into all of them. Everything that came out, every record that came out, we grabbed it and studied it. Everything, nothing got past us.
Well, Platypus was pretty diverse in their influences. You could tell in the music they created.
Well, I'll tell you what happened. we the early version of before Platypus, of even before Four Corners, before I was in Four Corners, me and Rock Jones and his brother Delbert, another guitar player, Derek Allman and the drummer Mike Green, Butch Wright, a singer, and Jerome Johnson, a singer who would have been with us if he was with us in Four Corners. And again, but the unexpected child thing happened, and he stayed. He would have gone to California with us. Kerry took his place. So that was an early band that I was in all throughout high school. I was 3 or 4 years with that group of people. In between us joining the three singers that I talked about, joining Rock and his brother and everything, we had been in this other group with Reggie Army called the Exotics. And some of them got older and quit the band. So we were with a band. So we joined this group in like our freshman, sophomore year. And then what happened is at one point, somebody that Jerome's father worked with in Oakwood in Dayton, which is the real white part of town with a lot of money. They had, total different things like, mansions, they're mansions in Oakwood and stuff. So this rock band, they were looking for some black singers. So we said, okay, let's see what's happening. So we went out there and joined with them. So we got introduced to Jimi Hendrix and Vanilla Fudge, and we were singing this kind of stuff with them, Steppenwolf, and we got hooked on that. Even though we came back and started doing the singing group thing again later, it never left us. I mean, that, we had all earlier been in the Beatles and stuff, but that faded stuff. This brought it all back again. So what happened is, I got even tighter with the musicians at one point than even with the singer group. And we started listening to really diverse stuff. Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears, right? The horn bands was the first thing that kind of kicked it out. Kicked it out. So this started getting it in our blood, even then, even in high school. And then something happened I went away with the Four Corners and went to Florida. I'm with East Coast, and, the Ohio Hustlers and all that, and then went to Florida. And I came back to Dayton, and something happened. Suddenly, all these black kids were suddenly into rock. I don't know what happened while we were gone. I came back, and they were like, it wasn't real hard stuff, but it was Grand Funk Railroad and blood rock, and I mean, it's like suddenly it was a fad. It didn't last with them forever, but they were really into it. The whole hippie thing. They were dressed different, so we were able to not just like this stuff, but now we were able to play it without anybody calling us names or anything. Before we were afraid to play any of this kind of stuff because it was like, what are you guys doing playing that? You know what I mean? So now we could actually play some of this stuff. And during the hiatus, we came back here thinking we were going to pick up a Rock and Hines and go back to Florida, and something happened and we got stuck there for a year and a half. So different people did. Stokes worked at our old high school. I can't remember what Floyd did. Jerome went back to Monsanto Chemical Research, where me and him had worked in high school. And so again, I was left with the musicians. I was just floating around every day, these nomads, not doing anything. None of us were working jobs, or we're just we're just doing our bum musician thing and just listening to music all day and being in Lloyd's basement, And then one day, at about the same time, we all heard, boom, bring, a roundabout. And again, our lives changed completely forever. Once we heard yes, there was no going back. We had to do that, So with the roundabout, we had missed about 3 records because that was on Fragile. So we went back and found the Yes album and just really got turned out on Yes.
Fragile was what, 72?
Yeah, I think so. And so they had 3 albums out before that. The first 2 were so-so, but the one before it was still really good. The Yes album with Seen All Good People and all of that stuff on it. So we learned all of that stuff. And then by this time, so when the group finally got back together again, after the Michael Jackson stuff came out, we were just touring, just up and down the East Coast. And we were in New York, and this trumpet player came to see us when we were playing someplace. I think Small's Paradise, and he was part of the all platinum band that played on all the music behind the Moments and all the groups on Sting and all platinum and stuff. The group out of New Jersey. So he liked the singers a lot, so he took us to New Jersey with him. We met Sylvia Robinson, George Kerr, and some of the moments and everything. We sort of auditioned for them, just vocally singing for them. Eli was still singing with us before Jerome was. And so they told us, well, go back to Dayton or whatever, because by this time we're still in Ohio Hustle. Write some songs and then come back. So this is my only second attempt at writing songs. This is the amazing part of this. You figure some people go their whole lives trying to do stuff and it doesn't happen. We go back and we write these songs. It still doesn't happen. We signed with them and everything, but nothing happens. We never go back. And we got a manager in Dayton. My friend Virgil Hummons had somebody he knew, Levinsky Allen, and he introduced them to him, and Vinny started to manage us. So Vinny had grown up in Cincinnati with Hal Davis, the Jackson 5's producer. Hal Davis came to Dayton to visit Vinny and his wife, and Vinny, I have this group, so he set it up for the rec room for us to play for Hal. We played our songs, our little songs that we made up. We thought they were, these are so great. The first time I found out what a producer did, because Hal sat up there and he took them apart and put them back together. But when he put them back together, they were it wasn't just listen to this, I made this up. They were professional songs. He really did. He didn't change melodies or anything, but he just structured them in such a way that we understood what a professionally written song should sound like, And there were four, so he had to leave and go back to LA, back to Motown. So he gave our manager the money to cut a demo. So we went down to Cybertechnic and cut the 3 songs that were ours and one cover, Misty, and sent them to Hal in California. So Motown passed on the group, but they liked one of the songs. So we got a cover of Michael Jackson on this album. Well, not just his album like the last one, but this was actually a soundtrack. There's one song from it was from the movie Ben, so it was a big deal. So you just never know what's going. One horrible written song in 1970, and then only my second, third, and fourth attempt at ever writing a song, and it goes on Michael Jackson. It doesn't make any sense. Dayton Daily News came out to my bedroom and interviewed me and Floyd and stuff. And so at this time we planned. Howard always been telling us, you guys you're gonna die on the East Coast. You're gonna die. You tell us we need to get away from them and come out to the West Coast. So we figured we found out when royalty period was, so we timed it right to get out there. We didn't know if we'd have gigs when we got there. He told us about different clubs and stuff, but we didn't. You never know. That's a long way from home. It's not like just driving to Kentucky or Tennessee or something. California. So we had already played Kansas City a couple of times. So we booked gigs in Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas, and worked our way out to California, knowing that royalties was the end of March, beginning of April, and if we didn't get work immediately, at least we could live off of whatever that would be, for the time being. So that was a major thing, for us. But and in the meantime, during all of this time that all of this stuff is going on, like I said, we continued to add more and more rock and pop rock stuff. We didn't go too far with it. It was, Three Dog Night and Rare Earth. You know what I mean? We didn't go too deep. We did Chicago songs. We didn't have horns, so we sung the horn part. We were always like a little, and then
like rock with a little bit of R&B to it and a little bit of pop to it.
Yeah, those were soulful groups, Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and Three Dog Night and Rare Earth and stuff. So we could get away with that. And we sung stuff like Bread. We sung a 4-part harmony. So, the Temptations had already done, they had In a Mellow Mood. So people were used to black acts singing pop songs in a soulful way. So, but bubbling up under that was, our love for this progressive rock. So and so we played the Palladium, the Lakeside Palladium, and and we were determined to do Roundabout. And we didn't even know the word. It just come out. We didn't know. I'm sure we played Roundabout before Yes did live. We had the words written down. We didn't even have time enough to learn them. We just knew the melody, and we played and we played and sung Roundabout at the Lakeview Palladium, like just no time after Roundabout came out. So we were already, even before coming out here, we were determined, to change our style. By the time we got to LA, we only had 2 songs with choreography left in. We had already changed to the rock band look and stance. We no longer wore uniforms that looked the same. The band was already, we were no longer wanting to be a singing group backup band, but we still had the 4 guys out front, and called the Four Corners. So that was a problem. We tried to get it to just be 4 corners, but nobody would do it. What I mean? It's very hard to get any kind of a band, even a rock band, where they're not going to call you the. I mean, I've heard the Pink Floyd, even. You know what I mean? It's just like some people are just going to force it no matter what. So,
but that was really happening with black music, with like Bloodstone and the Nightlighters and New Birth and
right,
and Funkadelic and
right.
Parliament Singers and all the bands were coming up.
It was coming along. It was coming, but it wasn't a lot, and they weren't going as far as we were. Music, I mean, they were just the music was a little freaked out, but they weren't changing time signatures. You know what I mean? So we're the first one black to go that far, and nobody really knew how to take that, and we were forcing it down people. Even after we got out here, we Mavericks Flat was just a Soul Train gang hangout, right, on Crenshaw. We opened up one night with the Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin. I mean, we were forcing the issue. We were a rock band.
That's like a Mother's Finest type of move, yeah.
Yeah, it is. Except maybe even further than them, So because but yeah, still that, because it's rock, but we're still black. So regardless as to what we're singing, it's still going to sound soulful. So there is that part, which confused everybody a little bit. But when we played the Whiskey, when we played the Starwood, when we played the big rock clubs, we got over it well. Nobody wasn't like these R&B cats. They were like, we're weird anyway, because I played electric auto harp. So people were already saying these guys are from a different planet. I don't know where these guys are from. So
how'd you get on that?
Everybody in the group was always looking for something. And we lived on Adams by Crenshaw, and I don't know where I was going, but I walked up Adams and I turned on Crenshaw, and I walked past this record shop, and it had for some reason, just in the window, it had this auto harp. It was only 12-bar auto harp, but I saw it and thought, man, I remembered it from elementary school, but still I started thinking these weird things I could do with it. I already thought about it, having it on my chest and putting a pickup on it and stuff. So we didn't have any money. We were so broke then. I took a bunch of albums that I had and traded them in to get this. Right? And I thought the group was gonna laugh. You know how bands are. I thought they were gonna just fall on the floor laughing. Isn't that what we had in elementary school? But this wasn't that kind of band. Immediately Hines looked at it, even though they only had 12 chords, and started figuring out how these, because we didn't have a keyboard player, how this could be incorporated into our thing. So immediately I got complete backup from everybody. There was no laughter. It was that kind of group, that kind of band. Okay, now we have something else. So I looked and found a place that some company had made this third party pickup, the slides underneath where the bars are. To electrify it, I'd have to try to put a guitar pickup on it. It was 36 strings. So it fed back, but still, it was what it was. So I just went from that. We went to Australia, and I bought a 15-bar, and I had already put a 25-bar one in the layaway at Wallach's Music Center before we left and stuff. It was sending money back to the girlfriends to go and pay for it and stuff. So we were always thinking like this, and we just kept this stuff. We went to Japan again, and I saw this instrument, this Kyosho Godo, and it's like typewriters holding down these strings. It's like typewriter keys on the top, but it goes down on top of these strings, which are about four in unison, and one is an octave. And again, I started thinking, something could. We're so weird. Anything is possible with us, platypus. I mean, we didn't know what that name meant originally and how it fit us, but it really did to a T. So I looked at that and thought again, I want to put a pickup on that, And I talked to the lady there, and she put a Strat pickup on it for me, and I brought it back. And again, Heinz went and got one too, and then also, So I mean, we just kept adding this stuff, you know.
That was before you had a record deal, even, right?
Oh yeah, no, we didn't have a record deal the whole time I was in the band. That happened after I got ill and left and stuff. So, but we just kept adding and adding and adding and adding to it, and it was an adventure. We just did everything we could. If we had money at the time, no telling what we would have done and pulled off, because creativity was all over the place. We were always talking about things we wanted to do, creating stuff, almost creating instruments, talking about, I would like to make this. It just, it didn't get a chance to happen. And
Dana, who were like one or two bands you saw back then, like in the mid 70s, say, that we would know that just really were impressive to you?
Yes, for starters,
So you saw Yes Live?
we went and saw them at the Forum the first year we got out here. Before that, even when we were in Dayton, we would go see Chicago, and we went and saw Emerson, Lake and Palmer. That was inspiring because it was only three of them. See, so that inspired us because it's like, if three guys can do that, surely we can pull some stuff off. Even if we don't have a keyboard player, we can do something, because those three guys played about as much music as you could possibly play. I mean, so that was inspiring. And then when we went to Australia, we met Rick Wakeman. He came to the club and saw us and stuff. We met a bunch of people in that club in Australia. Joe Cocker came. Richie Blackmore and Rainbow came in. See us while we were there. We met a bunch of people at that club, the Whiskey A Go Go in Australia and stuff. So we got a lot more positive feedback. I mean, the audiences were always cool, but we really got a lot of feedback from other bands. We were sort of a band, and musicians understood what we were doing and what we were trying to do. Even if we couldn't get there yet because we couldn't afford to, we didn't have the money to pull stuff off. They all saw. M. Toomey, who was with Roberta Flack, he knew, because he played with Miles and stuff. It wasn't anything about music he didn't know, so he knew where we were going. Whether we were able to pull it off at that time or not was insignificant. His ears, him playing in a fusion band with Miles Davis, not even one of the regular,
Bebop,
yeah. This was the out there, as far as bitches brew version of Miles. So, M. Toomey knew everywhere music could go, and he saw immediately, what we were going and what we were trying to do. So,
About how many members was Platypus at that time?
6. Yeah, there was just 6. Floyd had left and gone back to Dayton, and we never replaced him. It was just 6, and so, but by this time, Stokes was the only one that wasn't playing an instrument. Gary picked up the guitar, and I was playing all kinds of weird stuff. So that's how we got it done. I mean, it's like, Larry had a double neck and was, had a pedal steel and a Kodo on the side. I played the auto harp, and I had 3 Kodos stacked up like keyboards. Gary picked up guitar, and Rock played bass, and he had bass pedal, which like Squire from Yes, and a mini bass synthesizer. Curdy was back there with a gong. He had orchestra bells. We were all like an octopuses. We were all going back and forth trying to play 2 or 3 instruments at the same time to make up for the fact that we didn't have a keyboard player. We were 6 guys trying to be from Ohio, trying to be a progressive rock band without a keyboard player. I mean, all those bands had keyboard wizards. There was no other way to do that but without Keith Emerson or Rick Wakeman or the guy in Genesis. I can't think of his name right now, but they all had keyboard wizards, and we could never find anybody who could pull that off. So we just played as much stuff as we could individually, going back and forth to fill that sound up. And musicians would come and see us and really. I mean, that's where I lit Leon Silvers at Maverick. I mean, to this day, my other friend that was with him at the time, Dana Marshall, talked about, like I had the auto harp. He just like had never seen anything like that before in his life. It's like to this day, I still people who don't know my name will do this gesture, until I saw the auto harp and stuff. Robert Wilson in the Gap Band. I don't know if he ever knew my name. He just called me auto harp. Even when I was in Lakeside. So, it stuck in people's minds. And I think we were one demo away from pulling that off before I got ill. I got ill, and Larry got ill.
What year did you get ill?
77, 76, 77, somewhere in there. And then Larry got ill, and then they moved back to Dayton. I stayed out here. I got a little bit better, enough to go to Japan for 6 months. I sat, and did sung standards, me and the keyboard player. So as I got better, I didn't have to stand up and jump around or anything. I was singing Frank Sinatra and Barry Manilow songs, Stevie Wonder stuff mixed in for good measure. So, and then, here's a story for you. Leon saw me in Mavericks with Platypus, and I ran into him again once when I was helping Lakeside with their gear. So I got ill, and I was staying with Eugene, me and another artist, Afrika Tree, that he was producing, going to produce. Both of us were staying at his house up in Benedict Canyon. And I'm still ill, though. I mean, seriously, just aching. I met Jeffrey Daniel and Jody Watley and all of those people, Sharon Hill, all of them at Mavericks Flat. So a deal came to Solar when they were still Soul Train Records, and it was a 12-inch single called Uptown Festival, a bunch of Motown songs mixed into a dance thing. And so they bought that, but what came with it was the lead singer, Mumford. I can't remember his first name. But anyway, this lead singer came with the guy that sounded like Smokey, right? He came with the deal. So they put Jeffrey had already been singing in the Soul Train Gang singing group with Gerald Brown, but that disbanded. So Dick grabbed him, and for somehow Jody, I don't know if Jeffrey said, well, my girlfriend can say, I don't know how it happened. But anyway, he put them in, and so that was Shalimar. So I would see them on TV and stuff, doing this song and stuff. So Mumford decided he didn't want to sing secular music anymore. He got in religion. He didn't want to do secular music anymore. So Jeffrey found me somehow where I was staying at Eugene McDaniels and wanted me to take his place. But I was still really ill. If I hadn't been ill, I'd still be in Platypus. Like I said, it wasn't like, that's why I left, because I was sick. So I was seriously sick. So I told him, but he just wasn't getting it. I just wasn't, understanding how ill I was. So the next thing I know, Leon Silvers calls me. Tell him the same thing, but he's not willing to hear that either. So he at one point comes and picks me up from up there and takes me to meet Dick Griffey at, believe it or not, Mavericks Flat. Something the Whispers are doing something at Mavericks Flat. So it all comes back to that again. So I ended up having to pass because I didn't want to be the blow it for everybody. You know what I mean? It's like I couldn't even walk well most of the time without a cane and a crutch. There was this guy, Walter Jackson or something. He was on crutches. He could really sing, but he had an album at a time. I didn't want to be that guy. And I didn't know if Jeffrey and Jody could sing or not, but one thing I knew is they were dancers. And I don't want to be this guy on crutches and these two people dancing around me, and people say, nah, I'm not with them. And the whole thing failed because of me. So I passed on it. I thought to the good of everyone else. They thought because, Platypus and the whole rock thing that I didn't want to be commercial, and I kind of looking down my nose at them, I didn't want to do no pop, no soul thing or something. I found out, I thought they took it right, but years later, me and Mark and Vernon are backing up Carrie Lucas on the second Solar tour. And I'm sitting with her and she says, Dick said Dana ended up being a nice guy after all. I said, after I compare, I said, where's that coming from? But they all thought that I was tripping. So, but, you know, after all of that, the way that I ended up still, I was meant to be a Solar. I went to Japan for 6 months. I get back and have to go into LA. I haven't been back. Well, the first sad thing about it is I called my friend who was our road manager, Platypus, to pick me up from the airport 2 weeks earlier. He said, I've got some bad news for you, Hines. So that was like, it's like every time I left the country, it seemed like my grandmother died when we were in Australia. I almost had a child, which didn't happen when we were in Japan. But now, my buddies in school, passed away. So I didn't. And before there was always the band, somebody that your friends that you'd always known to be around that helped soak all of that up. I mean, my friend who I went there with, who became my friend after we did the gig. I mean, while we did the gig, it wasn't the same thing because he didn't know all of these people. So I was really alone in Japan, feeling this hurt of my friend passing. Luckily, we hung out, before I left. We went and saw Son, because he was going to UCLA for treatment. So he came up to Eugene and the guy's house, picked me up, and we go around. So I got a chance to hang out with him. But that was very rough. So I call William and he tells me that. So he picks me up in the airport. He lives in Venice. He takes me into LA the next day. For whatever I had to do, coming back in the country. So we go and do that. And we get ready to get back up on the freeway to go back to Venice. Beep. And I hear beep, 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 beep. And I turn to the side and I see this big afro and this Volvo, across me. It's Leon pulling me over. It's like, I haven't been back in town. I haven't been back in the country for 24 hours yet. And the first person I see that I know beside my friend is Lee. So he pulled me over and, I had this idea for this 3-man singing group. 3 guys who I still sing with now, even now. So, and I said no to so many things over the years that just like, I figured it was time to say yes, regardless, even whether it made sense to me or not. It was just time to say yes to something, So plus, while I've been gone, the Shalimar thing, wow, things took a weird turn while I was gone. I mean, it's amazing how quickly things happened. Gerald Brown took the guy's place instead of me. While I was gone, they went on tour and he fell out with Dick. So they got Howard, who again at Mavericks Flat, I met at Mavericks Flat. And I told Howard, I said, this is funny how our paths get crossing. Also, while I was with Eugene McDaniels, I ran into Jeffrey Bowen, the Motown producer, the Temptations. And he wanted me to be in this group with Eddie Hazel from the Funkadelics. So it never happened, but he ended up putting Howard in there, And then after that, I was supposed to do this gig in Japan with my friend Raymond Crossley, and he bowed out and put me together with Ralph Claiborne. Ralph Claiborne had been in a Mavericks band with Howard Hewitt called Beverly Hills. But he tried to kind of maneuver me out of it initially and put Howard into it. So again, this is like me and Howard keep crossing paths, a million times, this kind of way. So while I was gone, Take That to the Bank had come out, and it hit All the Way Live was out and making some noise. So wasn't a whole bunch of Solar noise. Soul Train, I don't think nothing had really happened. I mean, stuff had come out, but nothing, I can't even think of the name of some of the groups and stuff, but it didn't take off and stuff until I think Take That to the Bank, I think, maybe first thing, and then All the Way Live. So I joined them about this time in the, early as it started, these things started taking off. And Leon and Will Shelby auditioned me and Phil Parton and Vernon Wood's voice on And the Beat Goes On. So Norman Whitfield gave us a free studio time. We went in his studio, Fort Knox, and cut "And the Beat Goes On," "Out the Box," and another ballad by Steve Shockley had written. But before we could
wait, Dana, did Leon track you down, or was it just a coincidence that he?
It was a coincidence. He was just, 5 minutes earlier or later, it wouldn't have happened. That's what I'm saying. It was meant to be.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like, and he pulled me over to the side with this, this idea about the group of 3 lead singers. It's like, I just said yes, just immediately, just because, But the point I'm getting to is that those songs were ours. Dick heard them and put them on the Whispers because it was his biggest act, but it was not written for them. Those songs were "And the Beat Goes On." Those songs were, we went in the studio, and not only were they for us, we went in the studio and cut them.
So they were written for Lakeside or a different act?
Meyers, Park and Woods. It was the group that Leon put together. It was, we went in and cut those songs for us. And then the same thing happened in the next album. Somebody had stolen my car. I was taking 3 buses to work. I was working on lyrics to "It's a Love Thing" on my break. And the same thing happened. Leon called me at the studio, called me in the office. About the song. He heard it. No. So 2 major hits, that would have been me and Mark and Vernon put on the Whispers. You just never know. I bet they don't even know that. I bet they think those songs were written for them, but they were supposed to be Meyers, Park.
Oh, I'd be curious to hear those initial versions.
Yeah, we never sung on "And the Beat Goes On," but I have, my voice is on "It's a Love Thing." I mean, on the actual track. So that ended up being without the strings and stuff. So it's just stuff. Things just kept happening. We got a deal. This guy, because we kept having release dates on the bulletin board at Solar, and then it didn't happen. And so at one point, Leon talked to this guy. I think he used to be on RCA, but he was with Polygram, and he was in town, and he came and heard us in the studio. We were working on it. So he flipped. It's like, I'm signing you guys as soon as I get back to New York, right? The guy went back to New York and died. I said, okay, it's time to pull the plug on this group. It's like, that's an omen that I can't ignore that. I'm just a songwriter now. I'm just gonna do the songwriting thing. I'd already started doing some production and stuff by that time. It too, because Leon had mentored all of us to do that. To not just be songwriters.
There's much more to this great Truth and Rhythm interview. Just continue on to the next part of the episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. And become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon, or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you very much.